I'm in Itata, in the south region of wine elaboration of Chile. Although only officially instituted in 1994, wine elaboration in the valleys of Itata, Biobío and Malleco goes back several centuries, finding its roots in the Spanish colonization of the area and the grapes planted almost 4 centuries ago in this land. Chile has seen a transition to wines based on international varieties like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot and Chardonnay over the last decades. This has resulted on the elimination of about 75% of the old planties of local varieties, such as the grape País, also known as Listán Prieto. But the South region is leading the effort of recovering what has been tradition among the Chilean viticulturists for many generations, who focus their attention back to recovering centenary old vineyards that translate into outstanding and unique wines. Let's have a look at it. As the name indicates, the southern wine region is located in the south of Chile. It stretches between the Ñuble region and the Araucanía region, and it comprises 3 wine subregions: the Itata Valley to the north, the Malleco Valley to the south, and the Biobío Valley in between both of them. Each of these valleys is further subdivided into smaller subsections, like the Yumbel area in Biobío, for example, where we will visit 2 producers. Itata is one of Chile's oldest wine-producing regions. Indeed, in Itata we find Fundo La Palma, considered the mile zero of Chilean wine according to the people of Guaraligüe, which dates back to the 18th century, according to history and evidenced by the ruins of the Jesuits. We would talk about it with the locals later. For a long time, the southern region has been dedicated to the production of cheap grapes for blending, but has recently been experiencing a revival, with many producers establishing vineyards in the region due to the pressure of climate change and water shortages in northern areas. Although the newcomers are planting modern grape varieties such as Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon, the region is dominated by its old bush vines. Actually, about 2/3 of the plantings are old vines of Muscat, of Alexandria and País, and even Sonsol, which are now used to produce wines of high quality and distinction,
particularly in plots managed under the dry farming convention. In other words, without irrigation. I'm in Guaralihue, in the Itata Valley. I'm in the Kilómetro Cero, or 0 mile, of the wine of Chile. And I'm with Consuelo Pérez del Campo, who is owner of Viticulture, a hotel boutique that is dedicated for the dissemination of wine and the history around wine of this area. Consuelo, thank you very much for having us. How are you?
Hello, very well. Happy and pleased to have you here in this Chilean sector called Guaralihue.
Well, we're in a very historic place. In fact, these are the ruins related to the wine of the Jesuits, the oldest in Chile. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Well, of course, the truth is that we have more than 500 years of history. And these ruins that you see here were an old winery. There were the vats. And here too. This was built by the Jesuits who arrived in Chile and settled. This is the La Palma Fundo.
I want to see how winemaking worked here, how the wine started in Chile. As you say, it came with the Jesuits. What were the grapes they brought? They brought them from Spain, I suppose.
Exactly. Well, mainly the Jesuits came because of religion. So they sent vines to plant here, exclusively for the Mass ritual. The wine, in short, began to transform, no longer only for the Mass ritual. It was so good. This strain that they brought, which was the Pays grape, they called it the Cargadora, the loader, because it gave a lot of fruit, up to 30 bunches per vine sometimes, so that's why it's called a loader. So they came to Chile with that objective. But they settled here because there are two large rivers. There is the Biobío River and the Itata River. So it cost them a lot to pass to the north and the south. So they stayed here for many years, and mostly here at the La Palma Fundo. I don't know if you can see the palm trees, 1, 2 and 3 palm trees. Las Trinitarias is what they called them.
Those were the localization beacons.
Exactly, we could say that it was their GPS of the time, but ultimately the vineyards were transferred from generation to generation over the years.
It's very curious, maybe because of that history, that after the transition that Chile has made over the last decades to those international varieties such as Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Carmenère, and Chardonnay, still in this area, it is the area in which the greatest number of old vineyards are found, almost 100 years old, even more. And of this type of varieties, more than the international ones.
I have tried wines from vineyards that are more than 250 years old. In fact, the one I had last night is from a vineyard of the Pays grape that I would like you to see. It's more than 200 years old.
Consuelo, I wanted to end this conversation talking about your hotel, because your hotel, Viticulture, which we loved, we spent the night there with you guys. You have received us in such a fantastic manner, like nowhere else. I mentioned it in this documentary because you have an education mission about what wine is in the area. You're even the public relations of some of the winery, of many of the wineries. There is like a brotherhood here among winemakers. You all know each other and support each other, right? Can you invite people to come and stop by?
Yes, of course. The truth is, I am from here. I am 63 years old, and I've spent 63 years here in Guaralihue, so I know a lot of this place's history, and I love it. I love this land, I love the wine. So this is why we decided to rediscover again Guaralihue. We made this little boutique hotel, which is an inheritance from my mother. So we've put a lot of love to this place. We also cook for our guests. The idea is for the guests to learn about our wines and Guaralihue. We also work a lot on associativity. So that also lets us take our guests to different wineries, to other hotels, to visit everything that has to do with wine in the area. So I want to invite you all to all come and visit this beautiful town that is Garreley Way.
Thank you very much for welcoming us and for explaining everything. I'm in Biobío, in a spectacular valley in the south of Chile that will serve me to introduce the section that covers the climate, geology and soils of the southern region. The long distance from the equator makes this region naturally cold. Farther down south, we encounter the Chilean glaciers. Added to this is the fact that the coastal range diminishes its altitude the further one moves to the south. With fewer heats to protect the inland regions from the Pacific Ocean, the climate gets cooler and wetter. Here in Biobío, for example, the average rainfall regularly exceeds 1,000 millimeters per year, and summer temperatures rarely exceed 30 degrees centigrade. The morning fog is a constant in the area, as we can experience today. As a consequence, fungal disease can be a problem in the southern region. Ocean breezes and a good canopy management help mitigating the risk. In spite of this, the still high latitude, around 37 south of the equator, provides long days during the growing season, assisting the grapes to ripen. I'm with Fabián Mora Reyes, who is owner of the winery Mora Reyes here in Itata, in the Itata Valley. And we are in a very, very old vineyard that he owns here on the top of a hill. Hi Fabián, how are you?
Very good. Welcome to Vina Garreley Way.
Thank you very much. We're next to a very old vineyard of País. Is this the case, right?
That's right. It's a strain that must be around 80 years old, more or less. It is inside a vineyard plot that has mainly sensalt. The plots are not homogeneous 100%. They are interspersed with different varieties.
They are vines that have adapted phenomenally here for 300, 400 years that the Spanish Jesuits brought. They have adapted well here because of the soil and also the climate. What kind of climate do you have here?
I would say a Mediterranean climate. We have approximately 6 months of the year where it rains around 400, 500 milliliters.
Now, because before it was almost 1,000.
Before it was more, the quantity of rain has been decreasing. We have 6 months that are dry, from October to March, to when we harvest, with some rain in the spring, but very little.
Hi, I'm with Cristian Lago, who is the owner of Bodegas Trifulca here in Guaraligue, in the Itata Valley. Hello, Cristian, how are you?
Good, good.
What climate do you have in this region, more or less?
Well, the weather here I think makes us privileged. We are about 30 kilometers from the coast. So here in the afternoon, since the vines are not irrigated, we have the climate on the coast, which makes fog overnight.
We saw the fog this morning. It was all over the valley.
But the night fog is more dense. It's more like drizzle. In the mornings it's more like smoke, with little humidity. The night fog contains more water. It brings humidity. So since we don't have irrigation, That fog helps maintain these vines that we see here.
Hi, I'm here in Biobío and I'm with Ricardo Yáñez, who is the owner of the winery Viña Umpel. Hi Ricardo, thanks for having us.
Hello, good morning, very good.
Explain to me a little about the climate of the region. We are in the typical foggy morning state that you typically have in this area.
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to have you here and to receive you. Indeed, we are in the Yumbel area. We are 520 kilometers south of Santiago. We are approximately 70 kilometers away from the Andes mountain range, and in what is called the Intermediate Depression Zone. We have minimum temperatures in winter of -4 degrees Celsius and a maximum in summer of around 35 degrees. It is a moderate climate and we are in an area which is very ventilated, which does very well for the vines, in the sense of giving good shelter against plant diseases.
What average rainfall do you have here?
Approximately 1,000 millimeters on average. Last year we had 900. We understand that this year we are going to have more because of the El Niño phenomenon.
This lets you do dry farming without irrigation.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, this entire area has a dry farming denomination of origin, precisely because there is no irrigation here in any way, except when there are new plants, and those plants in the first year, irrigation is manually applied to them.
The geology of the wine-producing areas in the southern region is defined by the rivers conforming the three main valleys of Itata, Biobío, and Malleco. As mentioned before, the coastal range loses its altitude in arriving this far south of the country, and vineyards are mainly found in gently rolling hills with varying aspects. The soil is predominantly alluvial in the valley plains, formed by sediments deposited by the main valley rivers, such as the Itata River or the Ñuble River, to cite two of them. In the hills, red clay covered the granite mother rock, providing freshness and minerality to the wines. Well-selected land plots, many of them with centenary-old vines that are dry farmed, lead to wines of exceptional quality. I'm in Biobío and I'm with Mauricio González, who is owner of Agrícola Estación Yumbel. Hello Mauricio, thanks for receiving us. How are you?
Very good.
In this area, almost like in all of Chile, you have a granite base and then covered with clay. But I know that you have several variations within Biobío. Can you explain?
Of course, granite, which in general is a very present rock in all Chilean vineyards, is associated with the mountain range on the coast which you can see behind us. Precisely in this place we have another influence. Obviously the granite is very low, but above the granite is basaltic sands. Here there are volcanoes that are very close, the Antuco volcano and Nevado de Chillón volcano that are both very close. These two volcanoes, especially Antuco, have modified all the soil in this place. That is, basaltic sand of volcanic origin, is especially located in Yumbel and Larger, which are the communes located towards the coastal mountain range, over it, and towards the Central Valley.
Throughout the Biobío region, there is a lot of granite. However, we have the privilege from being on an area that is a volcanic silt soil coming from an eruption more than 4 centuries ago of the Antuco volcano. It is a strip that more or less borders 60 to 70 kilometers in distance and that allows us to have a very permeable soil that is very suitable precisely for vines.
Which is where we are right now. There are also soils with clay, right?
Indeed, that is the general rule in this area, the granitic clay soil.
The soil here has a granite base, but describe what else?
Well,
It's a granite base. And then there are soils that are red in this case. Clay, which retains a lot of moisture. This is very beneficial for the vineyard. It can accumulate enough water to be able to provide water to the vine gradually after spring and during summer. This allows the vineyard to survive and produce at low quantities.
I am in Viticulture, a wine boutique hotel in Gualeligüe, in the Itata Valley. The owners are dedicated to the dissemination of the viticulture and wine history of this area, and I find no better place to open the section where we will discuss the viticultural practices and grapes characteristics of the southern region. Chile has remained phylloxera-free thanks to its geographical barriers and strict quarantine rules. As a result, there are considerable plantings of all ungrafted vines, particularly bush vines of País, Muscat of Alexandria, Carignan and Sinsol in Itata and Biobío. The wet climate of this area makes the southern region one of the few places in Chile where dry farming can be applied to viticulture. This is particularly true with all bush vines, as the old roots have penetrated the soil to high depths and can reach water stored underground to survive the whole growing season. We will discuss this with the producers and viticulturists of Itata and Biobío, who are the ones working the fields and know better than nobody about this.
It is very difficult to maintain the vineyard here with this bush training of the vines. The control of weeds becomes very difficult because the vineyard is very low, close to the ground, and it's not possible to mechanize. It's very hard, so all work is done manually. The first works that start now in June. We clean the vine surroundings by hand. Then we clean in between vines with the use of horses and moving the soil, practicing 2 channels. Then in the months of September and October, cleaning again by hand to finalize the weed control.
You mean by hand with hand tools, and then with the help of a horse as well, right?
Right, the horse helps in between the rows, but closer to the vines you have to do it manually.
It could be done with herbicides, but with these good vineyards you don't do that, right?
No. The idea is to reduce the amount of chemicals that are used in the vineyard.
How is the viticulture of these vineyards that are so old and hard to maintain? Everything has to be done by hand. How to get rid of weeds? How do you work with these vines?
Yes, it is complicated because the vines are very low. So here, the only thing that fits at the farming level is a horse. The rest is done with a hoe. All done by hand. When harvesting you have to be crouched down, and with pruning too. Here your back will suffer a lot.
When the plant grows green and produces grapes, it'll go up to here, but the grapes will stay low, I suppose.
Not really, they're small. The branches when grown are shorter than you'd expect. That one there might be taller, but look, usually the branch is here.
So you have to work like this?
Yes, everywhere. You could lift the vines more, but you would have many branches, and you would need more water.
Because they have not enough roots.
Yes, and here there is not enough water. I mean, it's impossible to get water in the hills. Further downhill there is more water, but not up here. I irrigated this myself. I have some vines that are very new. I have those as high as 70 centimeters on a wire, but as I say, they take up more water. This year the summer was extremely cruel. The vines were absolutely stressed.
We are in a vineyard with very old vines of País, which are very tall. I see them quite tall, which, as you mentioned before, is to avoid frost.
Right, the ancient people in general would raise the vineyards, because every year there are more frosts. Here, we have this vineyard, and a vineyard down there. We harvest every 2 years. The rest is frosted. There is always ice, and one of the solutions is raising the vineyard. That's why there are vineyards here that are 1 meter tall, 1.20 meters, 1.30 and 1.50 meters even. The variety has so much strength, so much support, that it doesn't matter if it's 1.5 meters tall, because it is capable of holding the kilos of grapes it has.
I suppose that this is more important in the lower parts due to frost.
In the lower parts, it is necessary to lift, yes, but even if one lifts them 50 centimeters, it's not the same here as down there. Down there is a 15-meter difference, and the cold air moves very quickly towards the lower parts.
Interestingly, until the 90s, the most commonly planted grape variety in Chile was País. Traditionally used to make inexpensive wine, the pipeño, for the domestic market. Despite the replacement of these old vines by new international varieties, the southern region remains as the leading zone where high-quality wines are now being made from grapes such as País, Muscat of Alexandria, Sonsol, and Carignan, among others. In addition to these old plantings, many new plantings are being done with international varieties such as Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Merlot, and Cabernet Sauvignon. Due to the cooler climate of the southern valleys, winemakers start to see the potential to produce elegant aromatic white wines from grapes such as Sauvignon Blanc, Riesling, and Gewürztraminer as well. I wanted to ask you about the grapes. I know you work many. You also do a lot of experimentation. You're actually the first winemaker of Guadalajara. You're very recognized here. You have many achievements. And you even have Cabernet Sauvignon in a trellis system, which is not common here. But I want you to talk about your main grapes, which are 2 whites, the Chacelas and Semillon. Then you have 2 reds, the País and Cinsault.
Well, Chacelas is a strain that adapts well here because it is a strain of intermediate vigor. It does not need irrigation and grows well overall. And well, productions are low. But here we are talking about productions from 5,000 to 6,000 kilos per hectare.
And Semillon?
Semillon is maybe a little more because it is a larger and a more robust plant. It has a very deep root system. I would say that it adapts very well to all these characteristics.
And of course, there is no discussion about the País and Cinsault. Since they have been here for 400 years, they should adapt perfectly.
Of course, the País is older. Cinsault came a bit later, but it's already adjusted to this climate, to this type of soil, and to the amount of rain it gets. Furthermore, with the time we've known them for, we know very well how to handle them. The Cinsault is a little more susceptible to mildew, but we can control it with a more frequent application of sulfur. But we have good healthy grapes, so we have wines that are of very good quality from this strain.
Here we have Cinsault and Moscatel. I don't have País, but I have some new strains like Grenache which I planted, and Zinfandel. But these are not candidates for us. I brought them here to experiment, but they are actually working well.
Your highest quality wine comes from Cinsault, right? That is your grape.
Well, they always told us that Cinsault was never meant for bottling, but we started in 2014. I think we were the first or second that started doing bottled wine here in Itata. And many labels have sold from there, but I think it was a good example for the people.
Yes, Cinsault grows very well here, right? It came a long time ago and it produces really good wines.
With Cinsault, if you want structure, you have it. If you want something lighter, it also has it. If there's one thing that you're missing with Cinsault, it's the acidity that it doesn't have. Cinsault is a strain that if you don't vinify it well, it will remain sweet.
And the grapes. I know that you're focusing on 4 of them in particular. País, which is from here, of course, which is where we are. But what else?
Well, obviously País is the strain of this area. Here there are historical records of tax payments for planted hectares from the years 1500 and 1600. And it is the grape that forms a cultural heritage of this area. Well, Malbec also arrived many years ago in San Rosendo, which is 20-something kilometers from where we are, and we also have Malbec here. Additionally, Moscatel and Carignan. This last one we planted in 2018, and this year it will be the first year that we are going to bottle a wine that has been very good in this area.
I suppose these are varieties that adapt well here. In fact, the Malbec that is on the other side of the border in Argentina, you find it everywhere.
That's right. And well, in fact there are very good Malbecs in Argentina, and the truth is that what we are trying to achieve a good level of winemaking to make it a quality wine.
The Pays arrived with you, with the Spaniards, who arrived here several centuries ago. This is a border area. There were many soldiers here. Therefore, the soldier needs wine. Wine was nutritious that the soldiers would drink, and there is a lot of vineyards that are associated with that since 4 or 5 centuries ago. These vines are probably about 100, 120, 130 years old. They have been regenerating and renewing themselves, but the vineyard is very old. The main variety is Pays, and secondly Moscatel, but far away. Also, a little bit of Malbec.
Malbec has also been here for a while, right?
Malbec has been around for 160 or 180 years. I don't recall the exact time, but it arrived in the middle of the 18th century, and the government brought it to improve the color of Pays.
And now you're vinifying it alone.
We vinify it separately, because for me it doesn't make sense, because Pays has its own rusticity and authenticity, and that's its own color that it has. We do Malbec apart from the rest as well. The first reason is because we want to make the Pays wines 100% from Pays grapes. Each wine is 100%. The Malbec matures much earlier, 20-30 days before the Pays.
I am in Villa, an exceptional winery fully rooted to the traditional elaboration methods to produce wines from centenary old vineyards in the Bio Valley. In this section, we will learn how outstanding wines are elaborated in the southern region, both from old vines of Pays and other traditional grapes, as well as from several international varieties that have adapted particularly well to this region. The best to learn about the different elaboration methods is to ask the winemakers. Let's go.
Ten years ago, in the Atata Valley, specifically in this winery, we only did 2 wines, a white wine and a red wine, and both were made with skins. White wines were made like red wines. Starting in 2015, the facilities of the winery began to improve, and we began to separate the strains we had, which we had here our whole lives, the white strains. Since my ancestors, meaning my grandfather and my father, we've had 3 white strains. We have Chasselas, Moscatel, and Semillon. And with reds we have Pays and Cinsault mainly. We also have some other strains that have been here a long time, like Aramon for example.
How did you make the white wines?
Well, to make the whites we need to work them cold, to keep the aromas from the grape. It is important to have cold equipment and a small container to avoid rising temperatures too much during fermentation.
Do you give the whites on oak? Do you put them in barrels?
Yes, but very old and used oak. The wood effect in these wines is very gentle. With the whites, the grapes are harvested by hand. They go in with full branches into a pneumatic press that we have. Then we clean the must, and then it's fermented at cold temperatures for a period of time.
For how long?
15 or 20 days, more or less.
And then you do let it macerate for a while on the lees, or do you separate it and bottle it?
Well, I leave it with its lees for a bit, and then in some occasions some of it goes into oak. Then I make a blend of 50% of what's left in the tank and 50% of what goes into the oak. We also do battonage, moving the lees to provide the whites with a little more structure. Then we do clarification, stabilization, cold, filter, and finally we bottle. That's what we do for the whites.
What about the reds?
Well, for the reds, the main variety in this area is Sinsalt. We don't harvest Sinsalt very ripe. 12.5, 13 degrees, no more than that. We do this to harvest fresher grapes, to have a lighter wine. It is harvested by hand. The grapes arrive at the winery and we leave them here overnight so they get a bit colder. We do this so it doesn't have so much temperature from the field. Then we destem the fruit. Over there we macerate in a steel tank. Then we add yeast. When we finish the fermentation, we press and blend the wine with the free run. And then a bit of it goes into a barrel, and from there we make a blend. We also do the malolactic fermentation in the barrel.
How long do you age the wines in barrels, the Sinsalt, for example?
Just 6 or 7 months, no more.
At the end of the day, you look for fruity wines that are easy to drink. They've given you many international awards. You're very well known. It's very curious because you don't go out and sell. People have to buy from you here, but still, your wines are very recognized.
It's just that we put a lot of love into it. Everything that is production. We work very hard to have very high quality grapes. Grapes that are very clean and healthy. After that, we worry about the details in the winery to make a wine that consumers like a lot.
Well, we're in your winery, which is a garage-style winery, almost like the French. You have the vats, the concrete egg that I see there. Here off camera is the steel deposit. How do you elaborate the Sinsalt?
Well, our Sinsalt that sells in bulk. It is vinified in stainless steel because I have vats that are dual purpose. I vinify there, and then I take out the skins and add the must. And the wine that we bottle, the best wines that I make, this is vinified in high-quality plastic vats. They are like 600 liters, very small, because that allows us to make experiments. We have made wines with different processes, such as one with carbonic maceration, for example. Then, we blend the wines together. I like these vats because they are practical, because the volume is small, and when the volume is small, the temperature doesn't rise as it would in a 10,000, 15,000 liter tank. Because when the temperature rises, wow!
Then you wouldn't need to cool it.
Right, lowering the temperature would be difficult. The vat is easy to use for blending and everything, so I have the vats always covered. They always have to be covered so things like mosquitoes don't get in.
So you have several vats, and then you make a blend depending on how they came out to see what you like best.
Yes, in fact each vat goes into a different barrel. So from there, we start tasting the wines, studying the wines, to have a study and understanding of what you've made.
How many barrels do you use, more or less?
Around 20 barrels, more or less.
So you have a variety of choices to play with.
Yes, I have fruit to put in a barrel, but then you have to sell it, which is where the difficulties can begin. But this is what I love. I mean, I started here with 2 or 3 barrels.
We are in your winery, which is a fascinating one. It's made entirely out of adobe, which is hardly seen anymore, and it's even survived a big earthquake that you had here a few years ago, right?
Right, but not just one earthquake. Apart from 2010, which was the biggest earthquake in history, we had the earthquake of 1960. Also the earthquake of 1939, and this winery has survived here for more than 100 years. Aside of the adobe bricks, One interesting thing is that the structure is made from rawly wood and is not nailed. The whole structure is joined together with wood blocks. So this is why it maintains well when the earthquakes happen.
Rawly is how you made those deposits, which is where you ferment the pais, and the rest of your wines as well.
Indeed. Here the first fermentation we do in the rawly lagers, which are also very antique. In the middle, the smallest is a pylon that is also used for the same purpose. Next to it is another one of the same material. Finally we have the concrete lagers, which are of greater capacity. Those are actually from 1930. The date is recorded on there.
You do the fermentation of the wine the same way it was done 100 years ago.
The only difference with the traditional method is that in this area we use the zoranda, which is a kind of colleague strainer, which is a clean stick which is braced together and used to separate the berries from the stems. We no longer use that for hygiene reasons. Instead, a stainless steel destemmer is used. But all the rest is the same system that was used back then. Fermentation more or less is approximately 12 days, depending on the temperature. Here we normally harvest at the end of February, or first week of March, which is the beginning of autumn. Then a very abrupt drop in temperature occurs. The time of fermentation will depend on that. Then we sample, and depending on the strain, it goes to the barrel, the plastic tank, or the stainless steel tank.
I suppose from what you told me earlier, the ones that go to barrels are the Carignan and Malbec.
Yes, Carignan and Malbec.
The Moscatel and Pais don't go into barrels?
Well, the fermentation of Moscatel is done in clay jars. Very few countries still use these. The Moscatel works very well with the clay, and then from the fermentation in the jar it also passes into the tanks.
Those that you have in barrels, how long do you leave them for aging?
Well, we will bottle the Carignan in a month or two maximum. This one is from the year before last, so they've been in the barrel for at least 2 years.
What about Malbec?
For the Malbec we take it out before a year, usually 9 to 10 months.
Mauricio, within your winery, which you have built yourself like the ones built in the old days, which is with mud, well, can you explain it to me?
Well, this is a winery that is already 3 years old. We built it with local people, and of course, it's mud that we recycle from old wineries that collapse due to the earthquakes that occur continuously.
These are the adobe bricks.
Right, and we reactivated the bricks. We added straw, a bit of sand, and wood, which are the materials that are most available here. Soil, clay, straw and mud, and tiles too.
Then the clay tiles in the roof that are also recovered.
Yes, we also recovered them. But I don't know how old they are. I'm sure they're very old, and they're all different. It was very difficult to make the roof, but the tiles are part of this place.
These materials help you maintain a cold temperature even during summers, right?
Yes, the main thing was to make a winery that had tile on the roof. That's because the tile insulates the heat a lot. The wood and clay was also added to help cooling, and that coincided with the fact that all the old wineries here are 10 by 20 square meters, made of tiles and clay.
Hey, one thing that really attracts me about this winery, even the one of Ricardo that we visited before, is that you are very traditional when it comes to the production. You use large lagars made out of this local wood. You also use clay jars too, and I see some concrete deposits there too. Why do you use this instead of stainless steel tanks to control the temperature?
Well, the idea is to make wine while respecting the old ways. It is very difficult because jars are no longer made. It took us 10 years to put together the jars that are here. The rawly wood is also no longer made. All these deposits, lagers, barrels, that used to be done with rawly, because rawly cannot be used anymore. It is a protected species in Chile. So what we do is recover, or find a winery that can sell or gift us stuff like this, because this is how wine was made back then.
But that doesn't mean that you make bad wine. You still have temperature control.
That's correct. If you ask me, I'd like to use only rawly and clay jars. But it is not possible, because they are not easy to find. Find a rawly lager like the one we have here, with capacity for more than 3,000 liters is impossible. There are no more. Plus, the master artisans doing this are not here anymore. For example, last year Angoyo Figa passed away. He was the main master at repairing these deposits, and now there is no one left.
Right, these are hard to maintain. Out of the wines you make, which are the ones you focused on the most? Obviously País, but what else?
There are 3 different País wines of different soils and vineyards. The most important one for us is the Pipino, which is the wine fermented in the Rawley lager. Rawley is a native species in Chile, and we store it in a barrel called Pipa, which is made of Rawley as well. So it is an ultra-Chilean wine. It represents the wine that people drink in the countryside. This is the wine that is hardest to make, but the one we make the most of, because it represents the wine culture here.
Is this sold in pipas?
No, unfortunately, we don't have enough pipas for the quantity of wine that we produce. One part goes in pipa, and the other into stainless steel.
Okay, and what else do you make?
Well, we make 2 more País wines that are from different soils. They all ferment in Rawley lagers, some age in concrete, some in steel tanks, and Moscatel, which is the other variety that is very important here. In Bio, País is the king, and in second place is Moscatel, which is a white variety. We originally tried to make it in Rawley with aging in concrete, but the best result was fermenting and aging in clay jars.
Then you bottle it.
Right, we take it out, bring together all the jars. Normally not all of them work. There are some wines that go bad just because they are jars that are over 100 years old. Then they are gathered in a large vessel, a blend is made, and it's left there for a few days to settle and be cleaned. Generally we do not apply sulfur, but there are seasons that you have to. Last year we didn't. This season I don't know yet. 2 seasons ago we did add it in the blend before bottling, and that's it.
Right, because your wines are natural.
That is, more than talking about the word natural, for me it feels like everyone says they make natural wine. So for me, the most important thing is that we make traditional Chilean wine, old wine from the field.
Let me introduce you to Melissa del Campo, who will be tasting some of the wines with us. Melissa, did you expect the southern region to be like this? I was expecting it cold and wet, and it's definitively cold and wet. But I mean the wines. What do you think about the wines?
Well, we have tasted a few, and so far I am very impressed. What has surprised me is the amount of old vine there is in this region, and I cannot wait to taste some of the wines coming from these old vines.
I agree. You think about Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Carmenet when picturing Chilean wine, but this is just part of it, right? As we have found. I believe it is time to try those other wines.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we are in the right place with the right people. Mauricio, Melissa and I want to try your wines now. This is the Pipeña, right?
This wine is Pipino, which for me is the most important in Chile, because it's the most Chilean wine. It's fermented in Rawley, which is native to Chile. It's stored in a Rawley pipa, which is the same tree as the lager. So it is fermented and contained in something very Chilean. It is made by a Chilean master, and the wine is drunk in the countryside on a daily basis. It's a lunch wine. It's the wine of festivals in the countryside, and it represents the culture of the people.
Very good, let's try it.
The idea of this wine is for it to be drank quickly. This wine is drank like water here. It's very fruity on the nose, and it has low alcohol. The alcohol is low because the grape is not able to reach a high amount of alcohol. The soil where this wine is from is a very deep sandy soil of volcanic origin. The plant has a lot of vegetative expression. It's impossible to control the vegetation because there is no irrigation here. These are plants that have roots up to 10 or 15 meters deep. And here, there is a lot of available water. There are rivers that pass very close. In fact, down here we have a river nearby. The roots manage to reach it.
But this is a very fine pipeño, because we tried pipeño from Chinchombo and it was almost undrinkable. This is very soft.
What happens is that now the word pipino in Chile is considered the ordinary wine, the worst wine. Although, when you talk to the older generation, the pipino wine was sold in peepers, which were next to the train that would pass by. The peepers would be loaded onto the train, and it would take it to Tantaguano and Lota, which are mining places nearby, and people would take the wine and sell it to other people who bought the wine in bulk. And the most skilled wine drinkers would wait for the peeper to arrive and buy the wine immediately, because the wine that was taken to the winery would be transformed. People would manipulate the wine, adding water. So the wine that they sold after it was at the winery wasn't the same wine. So that's why the older generation say they want pipino wine, because it came from the peepers and wasn't interfered with.
Finally, your Malbec.
The Malbec is called Malbec Juanito. We only use grapes that belong to this place. This vineyard is about 3 kilometers from here. It's important because the oldest Malbec in South America is here, in San Rosendo, which is a commune near here. So people continue to maintain it, although there is very little left. So it's necessary to vinify it, because it represents part of the BOBO.
This is 100% Malbec.
100% Malbec aged in oak. This is a 2020 Malbec. It's aged 18 months in used barrel. Barrels brought from France. People recycle them from other wineries. And yeah, it's a simple wine. It's fermented in open barrels. This one doesn't go through rawly, and it's stored in old barrels.
Very good. The aroma is so good.
It's a wine that has power. Pays has a rustic tannin, and I like it that way, because the Pays variety is very rustic. But this one has a slightly silkier tannin, a longer tannin. It has more alcohol. This one has 13.5%, and it was harvested in February. Normally people harvest here in April. We harvest Malbec in the middle of February. It has a lot of fruit. It has an elegant tannin in the mouth. It fills the mouth. It is long-lasting. It is a very interesting wine.
Regarding the tannins, I think that if you leave it in the bottle for even more time, it will be rounded a little more, because I see it as quite strong.
That's right. The thing is, for me, although Malbec has another type of tannin, I feel like every wine that's from here should have that type of rusticity.
Very good. A fantastic wine to finish with. Thank you very much for showing us everything you do here. We're going to try the wines. We have the 3 of them here, Muscatel, País and Malbec.
The first thing I want to say, which is consistent with what I already told you in the vineyard. We also try to make our winemaking process as healthy as possible for those who consume it. There are no artificial yeasts here. There are no applications of preservatives. As I also told you, the handling is without intervention of any strange elements. We're trying to follow the same ancestral line of what winemaking is here.
So, natural wines.
Natural wines, or vinos doros, which they call as well. Well, let's first try a muscatel. As I said, it is fermented in a clay jar, and then it went to the tank. It has 10.9 degrees of alcohol. It was in the tank for 5 months. It has a color that differs from the general muscat color, because it actually has more color. It's not a dry wine. In its aroma, it has a lot of fruit present.
Tropical fruit.
More tropical, yes. More on the orange side, I would say.
Yes, exactly.
From the start, I understand it as a soft wine with a lot of fruit. It definitely remains. It remains on the palate and stays even throughout. It doesn't change.
Yes, it has a strong initial acidity, but it goes down after time.
It has a lot of bitterness. It's true that it has quite a journey on the palate. It's very good. Ricardo, of course we can't live without trying a País.
Yes, this is the wine that is most present in this area. You will see that it is a wine that also differs a bit of the general rule of the País. As for colour, the wine's fundamental characteristic is that it's ruby coloured. This one has a slightly deeper tone than ruby. It is a wine that has 13.9% alcohol. It was fermented in Rawley wood and then went to a stonk for 9 months. Normally for País, people say they can feel notes of earth and soil. That is, you can often identify the smell of the countryside after a heavy downpour. It's a wine that we can even call elegant, which is not the general rule for a País. The País is a wine that is often astringent or a bit tough.
It is very fruity. It has red fruits in particular. But it's true, I don't know if it is because we were walking in the fog this morning, but I do get that smell of wet soil.
Well, this wine is considered to be in the top 5 best País wines in Chile. The Uncorking Guide gave it 93 points and has been very well received.
The nose translates to the palate. It's very refreshing. The fruit is very elegant. And it has the greenery of the forest.
Very suitable for a hot day, for appetizers, for cheeses, and on these winter days, with a good dish of lentils.
We're going to finish with the Malbec.
Yes, we're going to finish off with this Malbec from the year 2021. It was also fermented in lager of Rawley and was then passed into the barrel. It was in the barrel for 9 months. This one is 12.8% alcohol. This is a wine that is obviously totally different from what we've already tried. It's a wine that has a lot of structure. It's a wine that has a lot more colour. The Uncorking Guide classified it with 94 points and the revelation of the year 2022.
It has compoted notes, almost.
Yes.
I was expecting it to be more fresh. It has less alcohol. Interesting, right? It's like marmalade.
Yes, like marmalade. It's a Malbec that's totally different and unique. That's right.
Yes, correct.
It has the same characteristics as the terroir from here. You can taste that on the palate.
Well, let's not forget that the Malbec from this area is from the original plants that came from Europe in the 17th century, which later became extinct in Europe. They were affected by a disease, and these are the ones that were preserved, especially the San Rosendo area, which is 20 kilometers away from here, and that is where it is most present. But throughout this area is also the original Malbec.
I noticed that in the nose is a very ripe fruit, but instead on the palate it's a much lighter and fresher.
Correct. And the fruit comes out more on the palate.
Black fruits.
Yes.
It is very good. What would you pair it with?
Well, with this, a rack of ribs.
Which is very typical here.
Yes, a rack of ribs with French fries, maybe also some sausage, on a cloudy day.
We'll have to do that. Thank you very much for showing us the winery and everything around here, and for letting us try your wines.
A pleasure, delighted. By the way, you have to come during the spring season and the harvest season to do it yourselves. It's a great moment that lets you find yourself with the terroir, especially with the grill that is made at the end of the harvest, which is already part of the cultural heritage of this area.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me twice. Cheers! Well, I'm here now with Isidro, who is the owner of the restaurant El Relicario in Yumbel, in Bio Bio. Hi Isidro, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
We have already been eating some starters, some appetizers that are very typical here. Can you remind me of them?
Well, the matcha, which is from the Pacific, the loco, which is a highly valued mollusk and very scarce due to the exploitation it has had, and the tongue with vinaigrette, which is a typical dish that we produce here. This comes from a dish that won an award for in Spain.
Very good. Now you will bring us two of the main dishes, right?
Look, this is southern hake. It is a hake from our southern sea. It's a fish that has very firm white meat. It will be very tasty. It is a fish that is very valued. In Spain, it is one of the most valued dishes.
This is awesome. For me. Ricardo, you do like it?
Very good.
And that one also comes accompanied with roasted potatoes and a touch of pepper. Now I want to surprise you with a smoked rib. It is very good. From a company that has a lot of prestige. It has the perfect touch of smoke. It's accompanied with purple cabbage, pickles, and roasted potatoes, also typical of the dishes of the area.
Very good. We're going to pair this with a wine from your competition, Eduardo, from Estación Jumbel.
Malbec.
Let me try this. It's really good.
All of the dishes here are a selection of dishes that we've made, which are considered to be the general public's liking.
Well, now the rabbit.
Well, I think the perfect finishing touch is the rabbit, which is a meat product dish. This is hunting meat of wild rabbits. Here we prepare it in a way to give it a little touch of smoke, and accompany it with baked potatoes and smoked sausage. Additionally, this comes accompanied with a salad, which is very typical in the region. It is a true Chilean salad. It has peeled tomato, red onion, white onion, cilantro, and olive oil.
This one here.
Yes, this one.
Very good, phenomenal. It's exquisite, super delicious. Thank you very much, Isidro, for showing us your food, which is of the very high level.
I'll surprise you with a delicious dessert typical from here.
Well, we'll leave that for later.
Very well, perfect. Thank you.
Fabian, we're going to try all your wines. We're going to try them directly from the barrels. This is the Semillon, right?
Yes, this is the Semillon. We're going to try it. This is the 2019 vintage. It has been in the barrel for a while now.
Very good. Look at this very fine color it has.
Yes, a nice color. It has a bit of fruit. It has some vanilla as well. You can feel the oak on the palate.
Yes, you can taste that. It's very elegant, it's soft.
It has very good acidity.
It has leaves as well. Yes, it's good. It has citrus.
It's quite citrusy.
Fabian, now we're gonna try your Chasselas, which you also have here in barrel. This grape is the Swiss grape.
Yes, this grape is Swiss. It has also been in the barrel for a while now. It has spent several months now in the barrel.
It has a bit more color, right?
Yes, the barrel gives it a bit more color.
Let's see.
It's very floral.
That's what I was going to say. I was smelling it from down here. It's actually very floral.
Yes, it's white flowers.
It's very fresh.
Yes, it's very fresh. On the palate it's rather neutral.
The floral notes are on the palate as well.
The acidity is very nice.
Yes, and the acidity is very nice. Well, Fabian, these wines are very interesting. Thank you very much for showing us the vineyards, the winery, and the wines directly from the barrel as they are being prepared, because they still have a little bit of time left for you to decide they are ready to bottle and ready to sell to the consumer.
It still has a bit left in the barrel before ready.
Well, cheers and continue with these great wines. Well, Christian, now let's try the wine. Plus, we're here inside the vineyard. Fantastic. We have a beautiful day. It is Trifulca.
Yes, this is the Trifulca, the 2019 vintage. This wine was one of the first to come out here. It's one of the wines that has always been given an award. Although, I don't like to put the medal on the bottle because I want Chileans to sell just the wine. I'm going to give you this wine to taste, which is an illustration of what we try to do here. That is, displaying the fruit and not using too much oak.
It has a good color.
Yes, nice color.
We try to rescue the aromas and the color.
Yes, it has quite enough color, but it's still translucent. It's a soft color.
With Sinsort, if one wants more color, you'll have very high alcohol levels.
What's the alcohol level?
This one has 13.5%, but it's well balanced. You can't notice the alcohol here.
The temperature is perfect. Yes, and on the palate, it's very characteristic of the fruits and of the own grape.
Yes, it's also very aromatic.
Yes, it has very good fruit. For me, it's most important to transfer the fruit into the wine.
Beyond the fruit notes, it has more things. It has barrel elements as well.
Yes, we don't use new barrels. Only barrels of third and fourth use. These wines have more love than technology.
Well, Christian, thank you very much for showing us the vineyards, the winery, and let us taste the wines.
Thank you guys for coming to Atata. Cheers!
Cheers! The southern region of Chile seemed mystical to me, and after having spent here a few days, it will remain mystical forever. The attachment to tradition of the people of the southern valleys is astonishing. The strong identification to a millenary culture translates into how locals understand wine production. Do you agree, Melissa?
I totally agree. If one thing has changed for me is that now Southern Chilean wine is not longer a wine alone, but a people wine.
Hospitality, that's the word that better describes the southern valleys. Thank you all for having received us to your homes with open hearts. We will be always in debt with this place.
And we will always have a southern wine in our cellars in your honor.
And don't forget, you can always find some of these wines in the WineDOs store. Cheers.
Cheers.